Hey guys, tonight we journey into the haze of ancient war, a place where bronze clashes against bronze, where sand drinks blood, and where one god stands at the center of it all, not in triumph, but in silence. You arrive on a battlefield that doesn't know it's dreaming. Smoke curls low over shattered shields, the air trembles with the last gasp of war cries, and time itself seems unsure whether to keep going. You're not a warrior, not tonight. You're something softer, a shadow, a witness, and standing in the center of the wreckage is him, Ares, not raging, not bellowing for more blood, not grinning over corpses. He stands perfectly still. There's a strange heaviness to him. His red plumes have wilted, his spear planted, tipped down like a flag he doesn't want to raise anymore. His breastplate is scratched and bent in places the forges of Hephaestus would never allow. And his eyes, those storm-dark eyes, aren't scanning for survivors. They're lost in thought, or maybe in memory. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments below. It's always amazing to see who's listening with us across the world. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a step forward. The battlefield shifts beneath your feet. Swords rust in the soil like forgotten flowers. Helmets still wear the expressions of the last men who screamed inside them. This war, it's not one you remember from any myth. Maybe it never made it into the scrolls. Ares notices you, not startled, just mildly amused, like he's seen too many visitors lately who think they understand him. He doesn't speak. Instead, he lifts one gauntleted hand and gestures follow. You walk past the slain, past banners that flutter like tired sighs, past chariots cracked down the axle and bloodied lyres smashed into silence. As you walk, the sky shifts. Stars appear, not twinkling, watching. The battlefield becomes a memory. You're walking backward through time now. You see Ares younger, still huge, still broad-shouldered, but colicky. You chuckle despite yourself. He was once a baby god, a baby war god. That's a terrifying idea, isn't it? But imagine it Olympus, echoing with the cries of an infant whose screams caused thunderclouds to form over islands. Hera, his mother, bouncing him on one hip with a scowl so tight it could crack marble. She loved him, perhaps, but more like a queen loves a weapon still being forged. You peek into the moments the myths rarely mention. Ares chewing on golden spearheads as a teething toy, his tantrums accidentally summoning lightning storms over Delphi. And once, just once, he took a flying leap off Mount Olympus because he saw a hawk and thought he could fly too. He landed in a sheep pasture in Boeotia. The sheep were never the same again. Historians still argue whether Hera favored Ares or merely feared what he might become if left to his own devices. He had siblings, yes, but unlike Apollo with his lyre or Athena with her wisdom, Ares had only one gift: destruction. And yet even the god of war was raised, taught, shaped. You glimpse an old centaur, not Chiron, but one of his lesser-known kin trying to teach young Ares restraint. The lesson ends when the centaur finds his tail on fire. Still, there were touches of gentleness. Once Hermes took Ares to the mortal world in disguise. They watched a festival in Thessaly, dancers, poets, lovers, sneaking behind fig trees. Ares asked, why mortals waste time on such things? Hermes smiled and said, because war comes anyway. So they fill the silence before it. That line must have stuck with him, because now, back on the battlefield, Ares looks at you with something close to weariness. You realize he isn't just inviting you to see his past. He wants you to understand why he stopped. He points to a sword buried halfway in a tree root. Not a grand weapon, just iron and sweat. This one, he finally speaks his voice. A gravel rumble belonged to a boy who never wanted to kill, but he did, for a king who never fought. He doesn't tell you what happened to the boy. He doesn't need to. The soil tells enough. Ares isn't ashamed. But there's a pause in him, a stillness that wasn't there in the myths. You're beginning to suspect that the stories humans tell about him, savage, unthinking, always losing, missed something. Maybe he wasn't meant to win. Maybe he wasn't trying to. You sit down beside him as the stars wheel overhead. For the first time in a long while, he seems grateful for company. And under that broken sky, the war god begins to whisper his own story. One no bard dared to sing. One only the quiet can carry. You close your eyes for a moment beside Ares, but when you open them again, you're not on a battlefield anymore. You're in a marble chamber high above the world, Olympus. Yes, but not the version gilded with thunder and divinity. This Olympus smells like milk, fire-warmed wool and crushed poppy seeds. It's the nursery, and there, swaddled in crimson cloth, is the one who will become the god of war, Ares. He is not yet the figure that mortal armies swear to before charging into chaos. Right now, he's just a baby with fists that clench too tightly even in sleep. You watch as Hera hovers over him. Her gown rustles like a banner in windless air, her eyes stormy, her mouth tight with expectation. She doesn't coo. Hera was not the singing to sleep kind of mother. She wrapped Ares in laws, not lullabies. Love for her was a fortress, cold, tall, and locked from the outside. And Ares, he cried, loudly, so loudly that Poseidon once threatened to flood the nursery, so persistently that Dionysus offered him a sip of wine just to shut him up. He was 2 months old. It didn't help. The Muses, bless them, tried singing over him once, but even their 9-part harmony couldn't outwail the baby of wrath. Historians still argue whether Ares was born angry or simply responded to the pressure of being the divine embodiment of rage before he could even sit upright. One ancient poet, now obscure, once wrote that Ares screamed not from pain, but from knowing too early the cruelty of fate. A bit dramatic, but you're beginning to think he might have been on to something. You walk alongside Hera now. She's not unkind, but every word she utters to her son sounds like it's been ironed, flat measured, careful, strategic. You will be feared, she says, once adjusting the cloth around Ares's kicking legs. You will not cry in front of Zeus. You will not lose to Athena. Ah, there it is, that sister. Even in his cradle, Ares is being prepared to compete with the golden daughter born from Zeus's head. Wisdom and strategy versus raw force and instinct. A god of war already losing to a goddess of war, and she hadn't even picked up a spear yet. Still Ares grew. Not on Olympus, though. No, Hera eventually sent him away. Too loud, too wild, too embarrassing at council meetings. You blink, and now you're somewhere else entirely. It's a sharp, wind-cut land, hills like broken teeth, forests that whisper threats instead of lullabies. And this, apparently, is where the god of war learned to walk. Thracian warriors didn't flinch when the boy god arrived. They raised him like one of their own, fed him meat from the hunt, taught him to climb cliffs barefoot, and watched in horror. Or was it awe when he crushed a bear's skull at age 7 with one hand by accident? You tag along as Ares plays at battle. The other boys wield wooden spears. his "it's real." A grown man's blade cut down to fit his hand. When he cuts his thumb on it, he doesn't cry. He laughs. Thrace, it turns out, is more of a father to him than Zeus ever was. And this version of Ares, he starts to make sense. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, his words are short and carved. He learns to track animals, mimic bird calls, and set ambushes in snow. The god of war is learning the poetry of violence, but even here quirks emerge. You spot Ares stopping to help a wounded fox limp across a frozen creek. He stays up one night carving runes into rocks, not of conquest, but of stories. And once, when a rival warrior insults his Thracian mentor, Ares doesn't kill him. He just breaks both the man's arms and says, "That's enough. Progress." You think so. Still he's not calm, not quite. At night he dreams strange things, fires that speak, spears that melt, fields that turn into faces. He wakes with his fists clenched, knuckles white from holding on to something. Maybe memory, maybe prophecy, or maybe just himself. And then one evening you follow him up a hill. The sky burns violet. He's 12 now, tall already. Intimidating, his mentor stands beside him, hands behind his back. "Why do you fight?" the man asks. Ares doesn't answer. So you do, in your head at least. You think of all the things you've seen, the expectations, the exile, the comparisons, the loneliness. Maybe fighting is the only place Ares feels certain. When things break, they stop being confusing. They just are. But the silence lingers, and then Ares finally speaks. "I fight because they made me." His voice is calm, but the wind shifts. That night, the god of war doesn't sleep. He just sharpens his blade over and over until dawn turns the hill gold, and you realize this isn't the story of a warrior trying to win. It's the story of one who's never been allowed to stop. The sharpening stone hisses a steady rasp in the quiet of morning. You sit nearby watching Ares carve the edge of his blade with a patience that feels unnatural. Like he's not just honing a weapon but punishing it. Or maybe whispering to it. The sword gleams in the dawn light, but his eyes are somewhere else. He's about to leave Thrace. Not by choice. Not really. A golden scroll arrived the night before, sealed with the lightning mark of Zeus. The message was short. 8 Olympian words burned into the papyrus like commandment. The boy must now learn the laws of war. You both know what that means. Olympus. Again. You travel with him riding clouds pulled by snorting storm dragons that grumble in Old Greek. Olympus rises like a dream carved from arrogance, gleaming spires, mist-wrapped columns, and ego in every marble curve. Ares does not smile when it comes into view. He arrives not as a son returning home, but as a soldier reporting for duty. And the lessons begin. Not with Athena, of course. She's far too busy tutoring kings in philosophy and winning loyalty with reason. No, Ares gets the less glamorous teachers. Kratos, the personification of strength, runs him through endless drills, break a neck in 4 ways, disarm 10 enemies, while blindfolded pin a centaur in under 5 seconds. Nike, the winged goddess of victory, shows him how to strike when no one's watching. Don't wait for fair, she says. There's no such thing in the stories they tell afterward. Even Eris, goddess of discord, pops in now and then, giggling, twirling daggers in her fingers, whispering strange riddles like win too well, and they'll call you evil. Lose too slowly, and they'll call you weak. Ares listens, silently, absorbing everything, memorizing bone structures, pressure points, psychological triggers. But he never asks a single question. You notice that. He does everything they say perfectly, but there's no curiosity, no joy, no glory in his gaze. He fights like someone doing taxes. Still, the training transforms him. The boy becomes a god in full. He grows broader, faster, quieter. He learns to shatter shields by screaming. He learns to smell fear like a spice in the air. And one day he breaks a golem made of bronze with his bare hands, tears its head off, gently sets it aside and asks, "What next?" The gods begin to avoid him a little after that. He doesn't talk much at the feast tables, doesn't flirt, doesn't scheme, doesn't even smirk when Apollo boasts about how many mortals wrote odes to him that week. Instead, Ares takes his seat at the edge of the divine banquet, gnawing through roasted boar and sipping wine like it offends him. You sit with him, quietly, like always. "Do they know what war is?" he asks, suddenly gesturing toward the chattering Olympians. You don't answer, you don't have to, because just then Hermes pops in with a scroll from a mortal king requesting divine blessing for a new war, and Ares is summoned, his first one. You descend with him to a sunburnt plain in Anatolia. Two city-states squabble over a river. Petty. But the death toll is about to skyrocket. The moment Ares touches down, you feel it. The air thickens. The birds flee. Even the ground seems to twitch. Mortals don't see him, but they feel him. That tightness in the chest before the trumpet call, that jitter in the knees before swords draw. The war god doesn't need to shout, he just needs to exist. And then chaos. You see his influence ripple like a fever dream. Soldiers forget their training and swing wilder, harder. Horses scream, arrows miss their targets only to hit something worse. A general on one side accidentally orders his best unit into a ditch. On the other side, a teenaged farm boy decapitates a knight without blinking. Ares walks through it, all hands behind his back. He doesn't intervene, he just watches and feeds. That's the secret you discover. He doesn't eat food in war, he eats emotion, fury, desperation.
Panic. He draws it into himself like incense smoke, and in return, he magnifies it tenfold. He becomes not just a god in the battle, he becomes the battle. And yet, he flinches when a young soldier stabs his best friend by accident. Doesn't say anything, just clenches his jaw and looks away. You see it. Ares might be war, but he's also the one who has to live with what war does. That night, the battle over the god sits alone by the river that started the whole mess. Mortals pile the dead nearby. No hymns for them, just flies and weeping widows. Ares doesn't speak, just dips his hands in the water. The blood doesn't come off. You sit beside him. Again, there's nothing to say, not yet, because war has begun, and the god who knows it best has a long way to go before he understands what it costs. The river hums with the memories of war, and Ares doesn't move.
His hands rest in the current, like he's hoping it'll drag the guilt away, but the blood stays stubborn, sticky, more metaphor than stain. You can almost hear the silence pressing in around him. Not peaceful silence. The other kind. The kind that comes after too much screaming. Eventually he stands, without a word, and you follow. Olympus calls again, but Ares doesn't rush back. He drifts up reluctantly, like smoke rising from something still burning. The gods greet him with wine laughter and a scroll of battle statistics. Dionysus wants the numbers for a play. Athena just raises one brow. But Aphrodite, she watches him, really watches, and that's how it begins. The love story no one wants to believe. Because what does the god of war want with the goddess of love? Everything. You catch the first moment in a corridor, carved of pearl and cloud. Ares stumbles past her after another awkward feast. He smells like ash and iron. She smells like oranges and sin. "You're leaking," she says, pointing to a cut on his arm. "I don't bleed for gods," he growls back, but she only smiles. Aphrodite doesn't flirt like mortals do. She invades, slowly, like perfume. One day she leaves a fig on his windowsill. The next, she borrows one of his spears just to see how heavy it is. Then one night, when Ares wakes in a cold sweat, she's already sitting there. "Bad dream," she whispers. "You don't want to know," he mutters. "Try me." And so he does. You watch unseen as he tells her things no war. God should admit how he hates the sound of bones snapping, how he sometimes hears the names of the dead echoing in his ears days after battle, how he can't remember the last time he slept and woke up calm. She doesn't mock him, she kisses his forehead. The affair begins not with fire but with permission, and it's surprisingly soft. Ares brings her broken shields instead of flowers. She draws hearts on his braces with melted wax. They make fun of Apollo together. He listens when she rants about being married off to Hephaestus like some kind of divine trade agreement. Historians still argue whether theirs was a love born of need rebellion or some kind of cosmic irony. But it felt real enough that Ares started sleeping better. That counts for something. Until it doesn't. Because Olympus doesn't like secrets, especially juicy ones, especially ones that involve beds shaking in rhythm above the Olympian throne room. One day Hephaestus catches them, not in the poetic way, no, literally catches them. He crafts a net, not just any net, a net woven from invisible bronze, thin as spiderwebs and strong enough to hold titans. He hangs it over the bed, waits, listens, and when the trap springs, well, let's just say you've never seen two gods look more awkward in such a compromising position. Ares tries to tear through it. Aphrodite tries to laugh it off. But then Hephaestus calls the entire pantheon to witness. Yes, all of them. Even Demeter shows up with a cup of tea. You're there too, tucked in the corner, invisible to them all, watching Ares' face go from rage to resignation. Zeus is snickering. Apollo's already composing a song. Hermes is placing bets on how red Ares' face can get. And Athena, she looks disgusted, not by the affair, but by the lack of strategy. The gods laugh loudly and for too long, but Ares doesn't fight back. He just clenches his jaw until it hurts. Eventually they're freed. The net disappears. Hephaestus walks away. Aphrodite smooths her dress and doesn't meet Ares' eyes. You follow him out. He doesn't speak for 3 days, just rides storms across the Aegean bare-chested and grim. You see the way he glares at the sky, daring it to mock him too. And when he finally lands, when he finally screams, it splits the clouds for miles. But no one hears, because no one listens to the god of war when he breaks. They only watch him when he bleeds. The sky closes behind you like a slammed gate. Ares lands hard, somewhere remote, sun-scorched, forgotten by maps. The kind of place where gods go to sulk and mortals go to die. He doesn't speak. You don't ask. You walk behind him as he trudges through ash dunes, whined, howling like a wounded hound. And then he stops. There were half buried in sand lies a helmet, but not just any helmet. This one screams, not metaphorically, literally. When Ares brushes the grit off the visor, the wind falls silent, the air bends. You feel your heartbeat speed up, your muscles clench, your instincts scream run. Because the helmet of panic has awakened. Ares picks it up like it's nothing more than a lost sandal. The moment it touches his brow, the world inhales. Then, Ra! A psychic blast floods the air, a shriek so primal it scrapes your soul raw. You stagger, birds drop from the sky. Somewhere, a lion starts attacking a tree. Every living thing within miles goes mad with terror for just one heartbeat. Then silence. Ares pulls the helmet off, cradles it in one arm like a sleeping baby. He doesn't smile, just mutters, "It remembers everything." You don't ask what he means, not yet. Instead, you follow him deeper into the wasteland where forgotten weapons lie rusting like ancient regrets. Spears twisted by lightning, shields with fingerprints scorched into their surfaces, broken chariots tangled with olive roots. This, he says, is where gods bury what they shouldn't have used. Historians still argue whether the helmet of panic was forged by Hephaestus or simply appeared one day after a war too old to name. Some believe it contains the voices of every soldier who died afraid. Others say it was once worn by Nyx herself, the goddess of night, until Ares stole it in a moment of madness. All you know is you never want to hear it scream again. And yet Ares keeps it.
Straps it to his hip like a second head. You wonder why. Is it a reminder, a punishment, a warning, you ask? He shrugs. It wins battles. Then he adds, almost too softly to hear. But it never wins the right ones. He doesn't explain. Instead, he tells you a story, one you didn't expect. It's about a city new, untested, ambitious, a city that dares to choose its own god. Poseidon and Athena stand before the people. Poseidon offers a saltwater spring. Athena offers an olive tree. The people choose wisdom, strategy. They choose her. And Ares. He watches from a distance, uninvited, as his half-sister plants her banner in mortal hearts. No one even asks what Ares would have offered. He would have given them victory. No tricks, no riddles, just power. But they didn't want that. They wanted clever. You see it in his face. That moment still stings. Not because he lost, because he wasn't even considered. In Olympus, he's tolerated. In battle, he's used.
But in the hearts of mortals he is feared, not followed. And so Ares turns his back on the newborn Athens. He doesn't curse them, he just walks away. And somewhere in that echoing step, you sense the origin of something heavier than rage, loneliness. Back in the wasteland, he reaches for the helmet again, lifts it, hesitates, and then places it gently atop a stone. "I thought it made me strong," he says, "but it just made me loud." He stares at the horizon. You ask what he wants now. His answer: to fight a war I don't regret. For the first time it hits you. Maybe the god of war isn't addicted to violence. Maybe he's just waiting for a fight worth believing in. The wind picks up. The helmet stays silent and you move on together. You don't walk far before the land changes again. From scorched dunes to sharp hills, then softening into olive groves and marble stairs. A city rises before you, white walls, proud banners, statues of gods in mid-boast. A place ruled by logic, law, and olive branches. Athens. You arrive not as tourists, but as trespassers in time. It's the age of heroes. The air hums with new ideas and even newer egos. But for Ares, the city is a bruise that never faded. Here they chose Athena. Here they said no to blood. But the irony, you're here now for blood anyway, because Ares killed someone. Not on a battlefield, not during war, just killed. The victim, Halorotheus, a minor godling son of Poseidon, found trying to assault Ares' daughter Alcippe. Ares caught him. Ares ended him, quickly, brutally, no apologies. and the gods were furious, not because Halirrhothias died, but because Ares acted without permission, without due process, without paperwork. You trail him to the Areopagus, a rocky outcrop outside the city, sacred to Mars, to justice, to vengeance. This is where they put Ares on trial, the god of war standing accused of murder. You expect thunder, fire, a dramatic shouted defense. Instead, Ares just folds his arms and says, "I did it." The judges blink. He goes on, "He touched what was mine. I stopped him. I'd do it again." Historians still argue whether this was the first divine trial or merely the most public one. Some say Zeus wanted a show. Others claim Athena insisted not out of pettiness, but principle. "Even gods must answer," she said, probably while polishing her spear. Ares didn't call witnesses, didn't argue precedent, didn't plead. He just stood there as stony as the hill itself, while his fate was debated by beings who'd burned cities for fun. And he was acquitted, technically, but not forgiven. You feel it as you leave the Areopagus, the looks from other gods, the whispered jokes behind celestial backs. Ares the butcher, Ares the hothead. Even some mortals start calling him the god of bloodlust instead of valor. That cut him deeper than any spear ever did. You watch him later that night, sitting alone on the edge of the hill. "I didn't do it for glory," he mutters. You nod. Of course not, but he goes on. "I didn't do it for rage either. I did it because she screamed." You freeze. He's talking about his daughter. I've heard screams before, he says, from soldiers, from generals, from dying kings. But that scream hers, it was different. He doesn't say more. He doesn't have to. The helmet of panic isn't on his head, but the memory of that scream is louder. You sit beside him again, quietly, always quietly, somewhere below the olive trees rustle, the same ones Athena gave the city, the same roots now tangled with judgment, pride, and old blood. Ares doesn't hate her. That's the strangest part. He respects her, fears her a little, even envies her, but most of all he listens to her. She's everything he's not: measured, strategic, beloved. And tonight, he watches her statue in the distance and says only one thing. She never has to explain herself. That line lingers. You wonder if that's what Ares really wants, not power, not worship, but to be understood without needing to defend every breath. The night deepens, stars sharpen. Somewhere a wolf howls without knowing why. You ask if he regrets it. The killing, he says. You nod. He shakes his head, but after a pause he adds, "I regret that justice needs permission." The hill is quiet again. You leave footprints in ancient stone as you both walk away, and behind you the shadow of the war god grows a little heavier, not because he's wrong, but because he knows he'll do it again if he has to. Athens disappears behind you when the olive trees fade into dust. The air thickens, the soil darkens. The road beneath your feet feels less like a path and more like a pulse, ancient, rhythmic, like a war drum you're only now hearing for the first time. You glance at Ares. He's different again. Not the embarrassed lover, not the vengeful father. Now he's armored in purpose eyes, sharp jaw set like stone under pressure. Because this isn't personal, this is political, this is war. The Amazons are on the move, and at their head rides Hippolyta, queen, warrior, sister of blades. You hear them before you see them, shouts like thunderclaps, hooves, cracking like whips against the dry earth, bronze slapping against leather. These women aren't just fighters, they're storm fronts on horseback. And Ares, he grins, because for once he's not there to destroy, he's there to fight with them. That's the surprise. See, not every myth says Ares was their enemy. In fact, in some forgotten versions, the ones scrawled on broken amphorae and whispered by drunk bards in coastal taverns, he was their patron. He trained them. He danced with them in blood. He fell for their fire, especially Hippolyta. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't mind. You find yourself in their camp one night, tents pitched like teeth around a fire that burns cold blue. The warriors sit in a circle sharpening blades, braiding hair, discussing battle plans like poets critique sonnets. Ares sits beside Hippolyta, not above her, beside her. You taught them well, you say. He shrugs. They taught me more, and you can see it, how they move without hesitation, how their loyalty is earned, not forced. These warriors don't kneel to him. They fight because they choose to. It's new for him, and he loves it. Historians still argue whether Ares and Hippolyta were lovers or merely battlefield soulmates. You're not sure it matters. The energy between them crackles like the space between storm clouds. Neither softens, neither yields, and yet they move together like a pair of blades, forged in the same fire. But of course it doesn't last, because mortals are involved, and mortals ruin everything. You see, it begin with a gift. A belt, a magical one, said to grant power, fertility, divine favor, depending on which bard you ask. It belonged to Hippolyta, a symbol of her rule. And then Heracles comes, because of course he does. He wants the belt as part of his labors. Doesn't ask, doesn't negotiate, just takes. The moment he steps into the camp, everything shatters. Hippolyta, curious at first, offers peace. But Hera, yes, that Hera disguises herself among the warriors, whispering rumors of betrayal. She fans the flames. The peace turns to paranoia, and paranoia turns to blood. Swords are drawn. Hippolyta falls. You don't see who strikes first. Maybe it was Heracles, maybe it was one of her own, driven mad by suspicion. But Ares, he sees her die, and everything breaks. The war god howls, not like before, not the roar of glory. This one is older, thicker, the kind that echoes backward in time, rattling the bones of myths not yet born. He charges, blind, furious, and Heracles is waiting.
God against demigod, fury against destiny. The fight tears the sky apart. You try to watch. You really do. But the violence is too much. Even the ground closes its eyes. When it's over, Ares lies broken. Not dead, just humiliated. Again. Heracles bloodied, but standing walks away with the belt. Another trophy, another task completed. And Ares. He doesn't rise for a long time. You kneel beside him. His chest heaves, one eye swollen shut. A crack in his armor slices down to the bone. I told her not to trust men, he whispers. Then after a long silence, she trusted me. That hurts more than any spear. You help him to his feet. The Amazons scatter. Their queen is gone, their unity broken. And the god who once fought beside them now walks alone again. He doesn't scream this time. He doesn't rage. He just limps forward, dragging his spear through the dirt, carving a quiet scar into the earth she once ruled. Dust clings to your throat as you walk.
The skies above are wide and blank, as if Olympus itself has turned its back for a while, maybe out of shame. Or boredom. The gods do get bored easily. Ares limps ahead of you, one hand gripping his side. He hasn't spoken in hours. The spear he drags behind him carves a trail through the earth like a wound that refuses to close. You don't ask where you're going. You feel it. This time you're not visiting a battle. You're visiting a memory that won't let go. And there it is, rising like a shadow from marble. Troy, not yet burning, not yet ruined. just poised, like a coin balanced on its edge, waiting for history to flick it one way or another. Ares has been here before, many times, but this time he bleeds more than usual, because the Trojan War was supposed to be his moment, and instead it made him bleed. Literally, repeatedly. And in front of mortals no less, you watch as Ares slips into the camp, not through the gates, through the shadows, no divine procession.
No horns announcing his presence. He moves like a curse, quiet, inevitable, misunderstood. And then you see him on the battlefield. The chaos is absolute. Spears arc through the air like shooting stars. Shields ring like gongs of doom. Bodies move in frantic rhythm, clashing, screaming, falling. And in the center, Ares, golden helm gleaming, eyes alight with a fire no forge could replicate. He moves like a tide of knives. When he enters battle, mortals scatter like birds. You brace for godly glory, but it's not that kind of day, because here comes Diomedes, favored by Athena, backed by divine ego, and carrying a spear that bites harder than it should. Ares charges, Diomedes doesn't flinch. The spear flies and pierces the god of war in the belly. The battlefield stops, even the birds stop mid-flap. And Ares screams, not in fury, not in divine power, in pain, raw, human, screaming like a mortal pain. You feel your blood chill. That was not supposed to happen.
He stumbles back, clutching his stomach. His blood pours over his bronze breastplate. The mortals stare in awe. One of them actually says, "Wait, gods can bleed." Yes, they can. And they do. Historians still argue whether Ares allowed himself to be wounded or whether Athena, ever the strategist, orchestrated it for the drama. Either way, the result is the same: the god of war humiliated in front of the very people he sought to impress. You follow him as he flees the battlefield, not flees, limping, groaning, bleeding, all the way back to Olympus, where he does what no god wants to do. He tattles, he bursts into the throne room, bellowing his pain, waving his wound like a receipt for injustice. "Father," he cries. "Zeus! Look what they did, Zeus!" Chuckles. "Oh, stop whining," he says, swirling his thunderbolt like a cocktail umbrella. "You're not the only one getting poked these days." Ares stares, no comfort, no sympathy.
Just divine indifference, and Hera rolling her eyes in the background, and that's when it hits you. The god of war has no allies. He fights for Olympus, but Olympus never fights for him. He bleeds for them, but they laugh when he limps. You trail him out of the throne room back into the cold wind. You want to ask, why keep doing this? Why serve those who don't care? Why battle for the approval of gods who wouldn't blink if you fell, but you don't ask? Because Ares answers anyway. "I fight," he mutters, "because the moment I stop, they'll call me useless." That line thuds in your chest. He isn't just war, he's Olympus's scapegoat. They mock him for what he is and punish him if he ever stops being it. Back in Troy, the war rages on without him. He returns eventually, of course, but now he's cautious, not out of fear, out of pride, because nothing cuts deeper than being laughed at while you're still bleeding. You wake with the sound of horses screaming.
But it's not Troy this time. It's Thebes' gravel plains, jagged walls, and a sun that feels sharp instead of warm. War again. Always war, only the names change. Ares trudges beside you, his armor dulled, not from disuse, but from too much use. Scratches like tally marks along his bracers. The red plume of his helmet hangs limp, sweat-soaked and fraying. But his eyes still gleam, because this time the fight is personal. You're here to witness a rare and terrible moment when a god fights another god's favorite son, Heracles. Yes, that Heracles. It all starts when Heracles kills Cycnus, Ares' son, a minor godling, yes, but still his blood. Ares doesn't love his children the way mortals do. But there's something sacred in lineage, in the continuation of chaos, and so he descends. No ceremony, no divine trumpet, just rage and a very large spear. You follow close behind as Ares storms onto the battlefield. He doesn't hesitate, he doesn't posture, he just attacks. Heracles barely has time to raise his club. The two clash like titans ripped from different epics. Bronze meets wood, steel meets sinew. They strike hard enough to rattle Olympus. And for a moment, you think Ares might win. He's faster, angrier, more desperate. But then Heracles pivots, dips, drives his knee into Ares' gut. You hear a crack. Then the war club swings and Ares falls, again, flat on his back in the dirt with a broken rib and shattered pride. Heracles walks away casual as a cat knocking something off a table. The mortal soldiers don't cheer. They don't need to. The silence is insult enough. You kneel beside Ares. He's wheezing, tasting blood, but the worst injury is invisible. His gaze is locked on the clouds, and you know what he's thinking. Why does this keep happening? He's a god of war. And yet he keeps losing. To Athena's champions, to strategy, to heroic sons of Zeus who smile as they break divine noses. Historians still argue whether Ares truly wanted revenge for his son or whether he fought just to prove he could still matter. Because if you look closely, the fight wasn't about sickness. It was about dignity, about being taken seriously in a pantheon that treats him like a joke with biceps. Later that night, as you both sit under the stars, Ares says nothing. Until he does, he didn't hesitate, he mutters, Heracles. He didn't even pause to ask why I was there. You nod. Ares wipes blood from his chin. And I didn't pause either. He leans back. They call me reckless. But what's more reckless than swinging before you think you glance at him? He's talking about himself. He knows. He knows his pattern, knows the script he keeps falling into. Show up, rage, bleed, retreat, repeat. But knowing isn't fixing. You wonder if he'll ever escape it. Then a quiet laugh escapes him. What? He shakes his head. I taught my son how to kill. Taught him where to put the blade, how to aim for the soft spots in armor. He looks at you, eyes dark, but I never taught him why. You sit there for a long time. The fire crackles low. In the distance, another battle begins. Ares doesn't move, and neither do you, because tonight is not for charging. Tonight is for mourning the kind of fatherhood that never learned how to love without blood. You find yourself on a dusty plain where silence rings louder than steel. There's no city here, no palace, no gods on chariots or kings waving swords, just wind, sand and footsteps heading towards Sparta. Ares walks ahead of you, bareheaded, now helm, swinging from his hand. His hair's longer streaked with ash. His eyes are dry, but you know what dryness hides too much burning inside. You've seen that look before. In generals, in widows, in gods who've been humiliated too many times to keep pretending it doesn't sting. Sparta is different. It doesn't build temples with gold or beg gods for miracles. It doesn't pray for peace. It prays for readiness. And that's why Ares comes, not to conquer, to teach. Sparta invites him in not as a guest, but as a necessity. And he says, yes, the training grounds rise before you, sharp and spare. Boys as young as 7 learning to fight in silence. Spears longer than their arms, faces set like stone. You expect fear, you find focus. This place doesn't worship Ares, it becomes him. You watch as he walks through their drills. He doesn't shout, doesn't bark orders, just nods, adjusts, corrects. He taps one boy's elbow, shifts another's footing. And the children, they listen. For once, Ares is not chaos. He is structure, and it suits him. One day, a Spartan elder approaches. You can't tell if he's a priest, a general, or both. In Sparta, those roles blend. He nods at Ares. They obey you. Ares shrugs. I obey their purpose. The elder smiles grim and tight. War is a temple here. We just needed a god to guard the door. And just like that, Ares becomes more than myth. He becomes method. Historians still argue whether Ares actively shaped Spartan law or merely stood as its symbol. Some say the city's obsession with discipline came from Athena's influence instead. But here, in this dusty yard, you see something else. You see belief, not in shrines or sacrifices, in sweat, in scars, in survival. Ares spends months here. Maybe years. Time bends oddly around gods, but something shifts in him. He doesn't charge into battles, he builds them. You watch him teach teenagers how to fight blindfolded, how to listen for breath, how to wait not to strike first, but to strike last. Rage is loud, he tells one recruit. Control is louder. That line stops you. Ares saying that you realize he's learning too, not how to be stronger, how to be quieter. But Sparta is still Sparta. And eventually the cost comes due. You see it in the way they train their boys to never cry, to kill wolves with bare hands at 13, to leave weak infants on cold hillsides because weakness has no home here. Ares flinches at that part. He never says anything, but one day you catch him at the edge of the hills, looking down at a pile of small, unmarked stones. He doesn't speak, just leaves a fragment of bronze armor at the base, a kind of apology, a kind of protest. He whispers, "They remember me for strength, but they've forgotten why I ever needed it." You walk with him back through the city. Spartan mothers nod at him with respect, not fear. Sons touch the handles of their blades when he passes like they're praying. And yet he doesn't smile, because Sparta, for all its devotion, has taken his teachings and boiled them into something too sharp, too narrow. They made him holy, but hollow. You ask if he'll stay. He shakes his head. They honor me too well here, he says. That's always when it goes wrong. The sun sets over rooftops that gleam like sword edges. And Ares, god of war, patron of pain, teacher of Sparta, walks into the dusk, not as a conqueror, as a caution. The desert gives way to sand, but not the kind kissed by wind. This is arena sand flat raked and packed tight under the pressure of thousands of eyes. You stand now, not in Greece, but far from it, Rome. And Ares, he's unrecognizable, not because he's disguised, because he's quiet. The gods have many forms, and today Ares chooses invisibility. Not literal, he walks among mortals, fully seen, but they don't know it's him. Because the Romans do not call him Ares, they call him Mars, and they pretend he's someone else entirely. The Romans love Mars, statues, festivals, temples built with more marble than the Parthenon could dream of. They say Mars is disciplined, strategic, a father of civilization. You glance sideways at the real god standing beside you.
He's watching a gladiator fight, and he looks confused, not horrified, not thrilled, just confused. You follow his gaze. The arena is roaring. Two men circle each other, bare-chested, sweat-gleaming swords, dragging blood behind them like red comets. The crowd shouts for death, for spectacle, for entertainment. Ares frowns. Why do they cheer, he mutters. Because someone will die, you reply. They always die, he says, but they used to matter. You tilt your head. To who, he doesn't answer. Because you both know the truth, these men aren't soldiers. They're sport. Trained pain for public glee, war without purpose, death without context. And Ares doesn't recognize it. Historians still argue whether Ares ever set foot in Rome or whether the Romans simply rebranded him into a cleaner myth, a god who fathers emperors, not orphans. But here in the belly of the Colosseum you see the fracture. They love Mars, they don't understand Ares.
He watches as one of the gladiators, a boy, really drops his sword, not out of cowardice, out of fatigue. The crowd boos. The emperor signals thumbs down, and Ares. He doesn't intervene, but his eyes burn. Later, as the blood is raked away and the crowd filters out with wine and breadcrumbs on their tunics, Ares remains seated. He looks up at the marble statue above the arena gates. It's him, sort of, chiseled to perfection, chin-lifted, armoured chest gleaming with the lies of idealism. They made me pretty, he says. You nod. They made me patriotic, he adds. You nod again. They made me forgettable. That one stings, because it's true. Rome doesn't worship the pain of war. They worship its outcome, its flags, its territories, its illusion of permanence. And Ares, he was never about conquest. He was about the moment before the clash, the struggle, the cost. He was about the men who didn't return. The Romans honor the victor. Ares mourns the broken. You walk with him through Roman streets, past temples with his name, but not his truth. People nod respectfully as he passes, thinking him a noble veteran or a philosopher too sunburned for toga life. No one sees the god behind the gaze. That night you find him perched on a rooftop, watching torches flicker across rooftops. I taught them how to survive, he says. You glance at him. He shakes his head. But I didn't teach them why to survive. A pause. Then, now they survive for applause. You say nothing, because beneath the marble, beneath the myths, the war god is realizing something terrifying. Even war can be turned into theatre, and he who once raged with purpose has been reduced to performance. You sit beside him as the wind shifts. The Colosseum glows faintly in the distance, and Ares, patron of fury, master of the battlefield, makes no vow. But you feel the tension in him, the coiled silence of someone who knows a time is coming, a battle will rise.
And this time, he may choose not to lift his blade. You leave Rome in the middle of the night. No goodbyes. No final look over the shoulder, just the sound of sandals scraping marble and a god who doesn't want to be seen anymore. Ares walks ahead, faster than before, not running, just moving like a man late for a reckoning. And you follow him over rivers, past hills, through burned villages and thriving ports until you reach a small, unremarkable hillside in central Greece. Nothing fancy, no temples here, just scattered stones and the crumbling base of what might have been something holy. Or might have been forgotten. Ares stops. This was supposed to be my temple, he says. You blink. What he gestures at the ruin. They started building it after a general won 3 battles in my name. But then Athena built one on the other hill. You look. And sure enough, a few miles away, her temple still stands. Columns proud, roof gleaming, offerings fresh. Ares' hill has moss and bird droppings. They never finished mine, he says, not bitterly, just stating it. You step carefully through the weeds. There are faint carvings on some stones, a helmet here, a broken spear, They're a name too eroded to read. You try to imagine it, this temple that never was. Grand statues, blood-soaked altars, walls hung with shields and vows. But maybe not, because this place feels like a whisper that got talked over by a more eloquent god. Historians still argue whether Ares ever had a major cult center in mainland Greece. Some say his worship was too wild to centralize. Others claim Athena's popularity quietly erased his. Either way, here lies the evidence, or what's left of it. I didn't stop them, Ares adds. You look at him. Why not, he shrugs, because what would they pray for? More rage, longer wars, louder screams. He bends, picks up a cracked stone, and brushes moss off its edge. The carving underneath is crude, almost childlike. A man with a sword raised to the sky, and behind him a figure bigger than the clouds. You realize the figure is him, Ares. He squints at the image. I think someone believed I watched over them, he says, voice oddly quiet. Even without marble, you sit on a stone and let the silence breathe. There's something sacred about this unfinished space. Not because it failed, because it wasn't needed. You say as much? And Ares nods. Athena teaches people how to win. I just remind them they might lose. He glances up at the clouds. That's not very comforting in a prayer. He lets the stone drop with a dull thud. You both stay there for a long time. No talking, no dramatics, just wind-rustling olive trees and the occasional buzz of some insect too stubborn to sleep. Then he speaks again. I think I liked it better when they feared me. You don't argue, but you also don't agree. Because something tells you he's starting to question that fear himself.
You leave just before dawn, no grand exit, just one last glance at a hill that never got to be holy, and a god who finally seems okay with that. The sun climbs slowly behind you as you descend from the hill that never became a temple. You expect Ares to return to Olympus, or vanish into mist, as he sometimes does when he's brooding, but instead he turns toward the sea, toward the edge of things. You follow feet crunching over gravel until you reach a place so old it no longer has a name, just the smell of salt, the cries of gulls, and a horizon that doesn't care about gods. There's something odd about Ares today. He keeps looking behind him as if expecting someone to follow, but no one does. You walk with him through the low tide, bare feet in the water, and listen as he finally says what's been haunting him. I don't go to the underworld, he mutters. It catches you off guard. Ever. He shakes his head. Not since the first time. You wait. Because gods rarely talk about that place. And when they do, it's usually in metaphors. But Ares, he just tells you. It was millennia ago, a mistake, a misstep, a favor to Hermes gone sideways. 1 foot on the river Styx, 1 moment too long, and suddenly he was there. And Ares, god of battle, breaker of champions, froze. Because it wasn't the flames or the shadows or even Cerberus that got to him. It was the silence. He tells you he walked through the fields of the unburied past phantoms who still clenched imaginary spears in their translucent fists, men who died shouting his name, boys who mistook glory for meaning, generals who had begged for his blessing and cursed it too late. They saw me, he says, and they remembered. You swallow because you understand now. He doesn't avoid the underworld out of fear of Hades. He avoids it because he knows what he caused, and they know it too. They didn't blame me, he continues. That made it worse. You both sit on a stone half sunken in seaweed. A broken altar, maybe. Or a throne long abandoned. They thanked me, Ares whispers. And there it is. The war god's greatest terror, that he'll be worshipped in the wrong place. You watch as he reaches into a pouch on his belt and pulls out a coin, drachma, worn almost unreadable. One of theirs, he says. I found it on the battlefield, never made it to Charon. He tosses it into the sea. It doesn't splash, it just sinks quietly like guilt. Historians still argue whether Ares had dealings with Hades. The myths are murky, with one or two scraps suggesting they once fought over something neither could win. But the clearer truth is this Ares avoids death, not because he can't handle it, but because it knows him too well. And you're just beginning to understand how deeply alive this god is, how much he aches not for victory, but for release. You ask him, if you could, would you undo it all? He doesn't answer.
Just looks at the horizon again. They sing songs about warriors, he says, but none about the ones who crawl away. A pause. I remember all of them. And you believe him because gods lie about many things, but never about the dead. The tide begins to rise. He stands and without looking back begins to walk along the shore. You follow, no longer to witness his wrath, but to walk beside what's left of it. The sea breeze sharpens as you walk, stinging your eyes with salt and something older, maybe memory, maybe regret. Ori says nothing for hours. He just walks the waves, brushing his ankles, his armor catching faint reflections of the sky. When he finally stops, it's not at a temple, not at a battlefield. It's a grove of olive trees, Athena's gift. The irony is thick, but Ares doesn't seem to care. He kneels beneath the oldest tree, its roots gnarled like a sleeping beast, and pulls something from under his cloak. A sword. No, the sword. Long. Ancient.
Its edge dulled by time, but its weight undeniable. You can feel it even from here, like a present. Like it still remembers every throat it kissed. You've seen it before, in glimpses on battlefields, in the hands of generals who begged for victory and screamed when they got it. And now Ares is burying it, not tossing, not smashing, burying. He digs slowly, bare-handed, like this is a ritual he's rehearsed 1,000 times in his mind, but never had the courage to complete. You sit nearby, say nothing. The soil is soft. It yields easily, as if it wants this blade to disappear. Finally, he lowers the sword into the earth, laying it beside a root, as if it were a sleeping child. He covers it with dirt, slow and careful. No prayers, no drama, just finality. You exhale. Then he speaks. She planted this tree after they chose her. You know he means Athena, the day the people of Athens picked wisdom over wrath, olive over ocean, mind over muscle.
I used to think they were wrong, he continues. That they'd chosen weakness. He leans back against the trunk. But now I think, maybe they just chose life. The wind sighs through the leaves. The whole grove seems to relax, as if it's been waiting centuries for this moment, for the god of war to stop holding a weapon even for just a day. Historians still argue whether Ares and Athena ever reconciled. In myths, they remain rivals, foils eternal opposites. But here, under her tree, Ares buries not just a sword, but something heavier. Pride, or maybe identity. He pulls a flask from his belt, offers you a sip. It's terrible wine. You both laugh. Yes, laugh. And for a flicker, Ares seems almost human. I didn't come to surrender, he says. Just to pause. That word hangs in the air. Pause, not retire, not vanish, just breathe. He lies back in the grass. You do the same. Above you, the olive leaves dance like lazy soldiers on furlough,
Somewhere in the distance, children's voices rise playful, unafraid. I used to think war made meaning, Ares says softly. But maybe it just makes noise. You close your eyes, and for once, so does he. No armor clinking, no shouting, no drums, just the slow, steady rhythm of a sword finally put to sleep under a tree that outgrew vengeance. The air is still sweet with olive blossoms when Ares rises. He doesn't look back at the buried sword, not even once, and neither do you, because this isn't about leaving something behind. It's about what he's walking toward. You follow him again because you always do, and before long, the grove fades behind you, replaced by hard-packed earth-scattered bones and cracked shields. This place is older than memory. You feel it in your spine. Ares doesn't announce it, but you know today he's revisiting the duel he lost to a mortal. Not Heracles, a different one, a name half lost to myth, known only in old Boeotian songs and the fading whispers of warrior lineages who don't even realize what their ancestor once did. You reach the site by midday. No monument marks it. Just a dead tree scorched by something divine, and a faint groove in the dirt, like someone very large once fell here. This is the spot Ares says. He doesn't sound angry, just tired. You look around, it's empty, silent, but you can feel the moment lingering here like smoke. And then Ares shows it to you, not with magic, with memory. He points to the place where he stood, where the mortal challenged him, not with arrogance, but with grief. A man who'd lost too many sons. A man who fought not for glory, but because war had taken everything else. Ares offered him a quick death. The man refused, and then he won, with a rusted blade, a perfect strike. Right under the god's armor between ribs, not fatal, but decisive. Ares fell and stayed down, not out of weakness, out of shock. Because it wasn't the pain that stunned him, it was the clarity. That mortal had no gods behind him, no blessings, no borrowed strength, just will, just sorrow turned into action. Historians still argue whether this duel happened at all. No surviving epic records, it and Ares himself never speaks of it on Olympus, but in the dirt beneath your feet something remembers. You ask what he did afterward. Laughed, he says. You blink. I lay there bleeding, Ares continues, and laughed harder than I had in centuries. Why? Because I realized I'd never win the way they want me to. He kneels at the base of the scorched tree, runs his hand over the bark like a priest reading braille from the gods. They want me to destroy, but mortals, they fight for different reasons. You sit with him, and for a while neither of you speak. The sun dips low, the shadows lengthen, and you feel a strange calm. Ares closes his eyes. The truth is, he murmurs, I didn't lose that day. You tilt your head. I learned what kind of war shouldn't be won. A breeze picks up, carries away the scent of ash. He stands, looks around one last time, then turns to you. Let's keep going. And you do, because this is a new kind of journey now. Not to find battles, to find the meaning beneath them. The land changes again. It always does, doesn't it? You've walked through empires, crossed scorched fields, sat beneath trees older than the Iliad, but this stretch of Greece feels different. Not wounded, haunted. You find yourself threading between towns that whisper rather than sing. Shrines left unattended. Roads too quiet for springtime. And the sky, though blue, feels heavy as if it knows what's coming. Ares slows down, then stops entirely. You realize where you are only when he speaks. My sons ruled this land, he says. And there it is. The curse of the war, God's children. He leads you toward a small outcrop overlooking a riverbed dry as a forgotten name. Below lies the shattered remnants of a city you can't place. Too old, too cursed. Its stones lie in chaotic piles, as if the gods themselves once shook it in a fit of rage. Ares points. 2 of them fought here, he says, and neither won. He's talking about his sons. And he has many, too many, Phobos and Deimos, panic and terror, twins born not of love but of need. They clung to Ares like shadows, not sons whispering madness in his ears during battle. Then there's Alcippe, his daughter, whose scream you still remember from the trial. Others less known, some mortal, some not. Some born of affairs whispered about only in the darkest corners of Olympia's court. Some of them he tried to raise, some he abandoned. All of them carried pieces of him, blades, for blood fury, for breath. And most of them died badly, or worse, became him. You sit beside Ares on the edge of the cliff. He looks down at the ruins like they owe him something. Maybe an explanation, maybe an apology, maybe a reason why none of them ever escaped what he did to them. They never knew how to live without fighting, he murmurs. You ask, did you try to teach them? He doesn't answer at first. Then I didn't know how. And that's the most honest thing he's ever said. Historians still argue over the fates of Ares' offspring. Some were warlords, others tyrants. Some simply vanished, their names scratched out of lineage scrolls like mould wiped from marble. A few tried to rebel against him and were crushed for it. Ares tells you of one in particular, a boy named Oenomaus. Fast, he says, too fast. He ruled over Pisa, challenged every suitor of his daughter to chariot races and killed them all. Not out of jealousy, out of habit, out of a belief that competition was how love worked. He'd inherited that from Ares, and it destroyed him. The war god stares at his hands.
I gave them strength, but I didn't give them rest. He stands, brushes the dust from his knees, then leads you down to the ruined city. As you walk through it, you realize something strange. There are no skeletons, no weapons left, just silence. A place where violence happened and then kept happening until there was nothing left to remember it. Like Ares' children themselves, stories that burned too hot to stay on the page. He pauses in what must have been a courtyard, marks something into the earth with his heel, a circle, then a line through it, then nothing else. What does it mean, you ask? He looks at it, then at you. Nothing if they don't stop. The wind picks up, carries dust into your eyes. When you look again, the symbol is gone. So is the city, so is the legacy. You keep walking, and Ares doesn't look back, not this time, because maybe he's finally starting to understand. Legacy isn't what you leave behind.
It's what you refuse to pass on. The sky darkens not with storm, but with weight. You and Ares step into the mouth of a gorge that splits the hills like a scar. Trees lean away from the path. Even the birds are quiet now. He walks ahead, slower than usual. His armor is gone, left behind at some unnamed bend. All he wears now is a simple tunic, dust-stained and travel-worn. You almost don't recognize him. And then there it is, a cave, not vast, not ominous, just quiet. Ares stops at the threshold. He turns to you, and for the first time since this whole journey began, his voice cracks. I used to come here, he says, before battle. After battle, between battles, you peer inside. It's nothing but stone. No altars, no hidden weapons. No dead offerings curled up in corners, just wall after wall of paintings, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, charcoal and blood, clay and crushed berries, finger marks and brush strokes, all swirled together in crude images, shield-splitting helmets, falling faces mid-scream. Some are done in a hurry, others are detailed down to the rivets on breastplates. One wall shows a single soldier, over and over dying in dozens of different ways. Another woman shielding a child eyes wide as war rushes past her like wildfire. This is where I put the ones I couldn't carry. Ares whispers. You step closer. There's one painting unlike the rest, simple, almost childlike. Ares himself, kneeling, hands open, no weapon, just open. You touch the wall, it's cold. Why did you stop coming, you ask? He exhales through his nose. Because I started losing track of which ones were mine. And there it is, the quiet confession. He's never given Olympus, never even admitted to himself. War doesn't end. It just collects. And he's been collecting it for eons. Historians don't know about this place. It's not in any myth.
No oracle ever sang of the cave where the god of war painted his ghosts. But you're standing in it now, and it feels more sacred than any temple you've ever seen. You look again at the painting of him kneeling. It's fresher than the others. You ask, did you paint that recently? He nods. You pause. Why? He looks at you, really looks at you with eyes that don't burn anymore but ache. Because I needed to see myself not fighting. You sit with him in the cave for a while. There are no lectures, no prophecies, just dust and memory and a strange, almost unbearable stillness. At one point, he reaches out and smears a painting. Just one, a faceless figure mid-scream. He doesn't explain, you don't ask. You both know what it means. Some things don't need to be remembered. Some wounds finally get to rest. Eventually he stands, brushes dirt from his hands. No one else comes here, he says. Would you want them to, you ask? He considers that, then shakes his head. Let the gods keep their temples. He glances at the ghosts on the walls. I'll keep this. You leave the cave behind its mouth, slowly disappearing, behind the rocks and vines that seem eager to reclaim it. Ares doesn't look back, because he doesn't need to. He finally left something, and for once, it didn't follow him out. The road after the cave is not marked on any map. You walk it anyway. Ares is quieter now, not the silence of sulking or rage, but the stillness of someone who's finally stopped wrestling with ghosts. You've seen him shattered. You've seen him victorious. Now you see him searching. And that search leads you to Thebes. Not the glorious Thebes of 7 gates and endless boasts. Thebes as it exists now is cracked at the edges, rebuilt too many times, still pretending it has its old teeth. But tonight, Thebes doesn't matter. Tonight, Ares is here for someone. The sun hangs low as you enter a training field on the edge of the city. And there he is, a boy, 16, maybe 17, muscles like rope scars already etched into his arms. He swings a sword like it owes him money. Ares watches from the shade. He's one of mine, he murmurs. You blink, another son. No, he says. Worse. The boy's name is Lycan, born to a line that traces itself to Ares way back. Generations of fighters, warriors in every war, men who wore the same expression right before they killed, and the same silence afterward. He thinks if he kills enough, Ares says he'll feel like something matters. And you feel it, that same pattern, that echo, the ripple of a legacy passed down like a curse. The sword, the rage, the hollowness afterward. You sit together as Lycan finishes his drills, No one notices Ares, no one sees the war god watching from the shadows like a man peering at a younger version of a mistake he never stopped making. He reminds me of Phobos, Ares says quietly. Before I told him, fear made him useful. There's a moment.
Then Ares stands, walks into the ring, just like that. Khan freezes, the others fall silent. The air thickens. Ares doesn't announce himself. He just picks up a practice spear and nods. "Come on," he says. "Let's see if you know why you're angry." Lycan charges, fury, precision. Beautiful, really, until Ares sidesteps him with ease. Again and again until the boy roars in frustration. "What do you want from me?" Lycan yells. Ares lowers the spear. An answer. The boy blinks. To what? To whether you'd still fight if no one ever sang your name. Silence. The onlookers stare. Even the wind pauses. Lycan doesn't reply. He storms off instead, shoving past everyone, his breath ragged. Ares doesn't stop him, doesn't follow. He just watches him disappear. He won't understand today, he says. You nod, but maybe in 5 wars. He turns to you. That's the problem. With leaving rage behind, he murmurs. You can't unteach what you never meant to pass on. Historians don't talk about Lycan. He never becomes a hero. He doesn't conquer kingdoms or start epics. But that boy, he fights fewer battles than his fathers. And one day he puts down his sword before he becomes a legend. Ares never sees him again. But you do, years later. And when he tells his son, "We don't pray to the god of war," you know exactly why. Legacy, after all, doesn't always arrive in a trumpet blast. Sometimes it shows up as a quiet refusal. You sleep beneath the stars that night, not because you're tired, but because Ares is. He lies on his back in the grass, one arm behind his head, staring upward like the constellations might finally offer him something other than mockery. He doesn't speak, you don't press, but when dawn comes, he rises with something like purpose, not fury, not pain, just a strange, almost unfamiliar calm. He walks without explaining, and you follow him, not across battlefields this time, but through valleys that seem untouched by myth. No scorch marks, no bones, just tall grass and the wind playing tag with itself. And then you see it. A cave again, but smaller. Hidden behind ivy and thyme. He pulls the vines aside. Inside it's dim, dry, and filled with silence so deep it feels padded. There's no shrine here, no paintings, no blood, just a flat stone in the center and a half-burned torch resting nearby. And in the corner, Ares' cloak, old, dusty, folded. You blink. You've been here before you say. He nods. I disappeared once. Everyone thought I was in Thrace. You walk in with him. It was here for years. You pause. He wasn't training, wasn't bleeding, wasn't raging. He was hiding. He confirms it with a shrug. I thought I'd try not being a god for a while. And what did he do all those years? He painted again, on bark, on rock. He read scrolls no one asked him to. He built a small fire and watched it rise and fall like a heartbeat. He thought about leaving Olympus forever. And he didn't miss war, not even once. You could have stayed, you whisper. I know. So why did you leave? He doesn't answer right away. Then because I thought I still had something to fix. You glance around. The air smells of cedar and moss. The world hasn't found this place yet. No one has. Except you. You realize something as he runs his hand along the stone. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was his retreat. Not in shame. In choice. The cave didn't reject him. The war just couldn't find him here. Historians never knew about this. No scrolls, no bards, no temples carved to mark it. But in this tiny cave you see the most human part of Ares, Not the fighter, not the failure. The man, he doesn't say much after that, just stirs the old coals with a stick. Then finally I kept waiting for them to come find me. You frown? Who? He shrugs. Zeus? Athena? Anyone? Did they? No. And somehow that hurt more than anything. You sit on the stone beside him. He looks older here, not weaker, just real. Eventually he stands and dusts off the cloak, folds it again, sets it back down. You're not taking it, you ask. He smiles faintly. I'm not staying. Then turning to you, but I needed to remember that I could. You walk out of the cave together, the vines falling shut behind you like curtains after a final act, and Ares doesn't look back. Because this time what he's leaving isn't pain, it's peace. The hills give way to firelight, but not the devouring kind. Campfires, dozens of them. You and Ares arrive on the outskirts of a mortal war. You don't know the names of the kings, you don't recognize the banners. It could be anywhere, could be any time, but it's now. Soldiers sit sharpening blades, eating in silence, writing letters they'll never send. Others practice lunges with spears more out of fear than discipline. You step into the camp unnoticed. Ares doesn't glow or boom or blaze. He walks through them like a ghost with weight. One man looks up, stares at Ares, squints, then nods as if recognizing something in the face, not the name. A tired kinship. No one bows, no one prays, and Ares doesn't ask for it. You find a spot near the edge of the camp beneath a tree blackened by past lightning. Ares sits leaning back, watching the soldiers move like wind-up toys wound too tight. You ask what he plans to do. Nothing. You blink. He nods toward the battlefield on the other side of the ridge. They'll fight at dawn. It's already been decided. Both sides think they're right. Both sides think I'm on their side. You glance toward the flags. One has a red bull, the other a golden ram. You ask which side he favors. I don't, he says. Not this time. He gestures to the men sleeping on the ground, curled around their weapons. I'm not here to pick a winner. You nod slowly. Then why are you here? He leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. To see what happens when I don't help either of them. That silences you, because Ares, the god of war, has walked into a battle, and for the first time in his life intends to not win, not even try. I've been the roar, the rush, the madness, he says. Let's see what happens without me. You sit with him as the fires die down. A young soldier stirs in his sleep, muttering a prayer not to Ares but to his mother. Ares watches. He doesn't sneer, he just closes his eyes. Maybe that's the better prayer. When dawn comes, the horns blare. Men rise, blades glint. Dust curls like breath from a dying mouth. But Ares stays where he is. Doesn't stand, doesn't shout. He refuses. You see men look around during the charge, eyes wide like something is missing. They don't know why their hands shake more than usual, why their feet feel heavier, why the courage doesn't quite come all the way up from the chest. It's because he's not in it. Ares has stepped away, and without him the battle becomes something else. Slower, clumsier, more human, less glorious. You can feel the difference. So can they. By dusk, the fight ends, not with a clear victor, but with survivors crawling back toward the fires, not singing, not boasting, just alive. And Ares, he's still under the tree. You sit beside him, stunned. You changed the battle, you say. He shrugs. No, they did. Historians won't record this fight. Too messy, too indecisive. No heroes, just a war that didn't work quite right. But you'll remember it. because this was the battle Ares refused to win, and it might be the only one that saved more than it destroyed. He stands. Finally. Let's go. You look at him, where he smiles, faint and sad. Anywhere that isn't waiting for me to bleed. And so you walk on, leaving behind the first battlefield where silence was louder than his name. Olympus is never where you left it. It tilts with time, slides between clouds, disappears for decades, only to return when someone tells a good enough story. But Ares knows the way, and so do you now. You rise with him into thinning air, the world below, shrinking until the mortal scars blur into soft wrinkles. Thunder rumbles somewhere distant, not from a storm, but from ego. And there it is, golden, vast, and gleaming in ways that no longer impress either of you. Olympus, Ares lands hard, no ceremony, no trumpet blasts, just boots on marble. You walk behind him through the main hall, past grinning mosaics of gods who never bled under ceilings etched with victories no one bothered to double-check. And they're all there. Zeus sprawled on his throne like a man trying to remember why he ever stood up. Hera, reading something she pretends isn't gossip. Apollo tuning an instrument he hasn't invented yet. Athena sharpening a blade, so sharp it might cut the silence. Ares doesn't bow. He doesn't even pause, but they do. Conversations trail off. Laughter dies, the smell of nectar turns sour. Ares walks to the center of the room and simply stands. Zeus raises a brow. You look dusty, he says, trying for levity. Ares says nothing. You've been gone a while, Athena adds, gaze unreadable. I didn't miss the place, Ares replies. Hera clicks her tongue. Still sulking, I'm not here to sulk, he says. He removes something from his belt, not a weapon, a pouch. He tosses it onto the floor. It lands with a clink. Dozens of small coins spill out. Old, worn, dusty, drachma, Roman sesterces, coins meant for the mouths of the dead. Charon's fee. Everyone stares. No one speaks. You never see what happens after Ares says. You write the songs, you measure the glory, but you never see who doesn't come back. Apollo rolls his eyes. Not this again. You didn't fight beside them, Ares says, eyes narrowing. You sang. Athena watches him carefully. So what do you want, brother? Forgiveness, a monument? A thank you from the dead. No, Ares, says, voice calm. I want you to know I'm done fighting for you. Silence. It lands heavier than any thunderbolt Zeus could summon. I'll fight when I choose, not when Olympus is bored, not when you need someone to distract mortals while you rearrange their borders. He turns toward the exit. Zeus frowns. You're a god of war. I know, Ares replies. But are you still a god? Hera asks sharply. Ares stops, doesn't look back. Ask me when the next war starts. If I don't show up, I guess you'll have your answer. And then he's gone, out the gate, down the steps into the mist. You hurry after him, heart pounding. You've never seen Olympus that quiet. Outside the air is brighter. The weight lifts. Ares breathes in deeply, like the sky finally tastes right again. Did you mean it, you ask? That I'm done with them? You nod. He stares ahead. They've mocked me when I bled, ignored me when I broke. But when things fall apart, I'm the one they send. A pause. I'll fight again, but not for them. He walks on. And behind you, Olympus doesn't call him back, because this time they know he might not answer. The wind carries the taste of smoke, but it's not the battlefield kind, not yet. This smoke is sweet perfumed, rising from a small shrine tucked between crumbling cliffs. Petals drift across the path. You hear soft laughter echoing off stone. Aphrodite is here. You knew this was coming. So did Ares. He slows, brushing dust from his sleeves, as if that will make a difference. You walk with him through the archway into a courtyard bathed in the kind of light that doesn't belong to any sun, soft, golden, forgiving. Roses curl up marble pillars, doves preen in bowls of honeyed water. Everything is sensual, effortless, designed to lower your guard, except you're on edge. Because love is never just love in this place. She stands at the center, not draped in silks or lounging on a chaise. Not now. Aphrodite wears a simple dress, her hair wind-blown. Her hands still slick with rose oil from tending the altar. She sees him, smiles, but not like before. Not the coy, shimmering smile that promised chaos and pleasure. This one is tired. You found me, she says. I wasn't looking. Ares replies. She raises one perfect eyebrow. Oh, that's a lie. He doesn't argue. You hang back, watching. Two gods who burn the sky now speak like ex-lovers outside a temple service. Too much history between them. Too many unspoken regrets.
I heard you buried a sword, she says. I've buried more than that, he murmurs. A beat. She doesn't ask what else. She already knows. A breeze moves between them. You never stayed, she says. You never asked me to. She laughs soft and sharp at once. You would have said no, he nods. Probably. And just like that, 1,000 years of ache fit into 3 sentences. Historians love to talk about their affair, how it shocked Olympus, how Hephaestus trapped them in that golden net. But the historians never ask what happened after. The gossip faded, the net came down, and Ares never looked at her the same way again. Did you ever love me? She asks. The question is cruel in its softness. He doesn't flinch. I did. Do you still? He looks at her, not at the face, not the beauty, but at her. I love what we were, he says, but I don't love who I was. That silence returns, but it's different now, less sharp, more like a curtain falling.
Aphrodite steps forward, touches his cheek, not seductively, tenderly, like one would touch a photo before putting it away. I used to think we were passion, she says. We were Ares replies, but we mistook it for peace. She leans in, kisses his temple. No gods watching, no judgment. Just 2 immortals finally telling the truth. Then she steps back and walks away. No anger, no tears, just the quiet ending of something that once burned too brightly. You follow Ares as he leaves the shrine. He doesn't say a word for a long time. Then softly, she never needed me. You glance at him. Did you need her? He thinks. Then I needed to believe someone wanted me without a war around me. You don't reply, because you understand now. He wasn't just the god of war. He was the god of trying to be wanted outside of it. And now he walks with nothing left to prove, because even love, the kind that once lit the world on fire, has let him go. The road is rougher now, narrow, twisting, the kind of path that doesn't appear on any map but always seems to find you when you've run out of places to go. Ares walks slower, not from weariness, but because this next step hurts. You feel it before you see it, a pulsing in the air, a heat behind the eyes, a kind of pressure that makes your spine want to bow. And then he appears, Phobos, terror incarnate, Ares' son. You've seen him before, flitting at the edges of battles, grinning behind the screams of dying men. But this is different. This is no illusion. Phobos stands in the center of a field, blackened by fear, literally. The grass here doesn't grow. The trees are leafless and sharp. The birds don't come close. And he is smiling, not like a child, like a weapon. You stay back. Ares walks forward, no helmet, no sword, just his shadow, long and steady behind him. Son, he says. Phobos tilts his head. You look small today. Ares doesn't react.
I'm not here to fight you. Then you're already losing. It's hard to describe what Phobos looks like. His form flickers young man wolf shadow soldier fire. He wears 1,000 faces of every nightmare that's ever clawed into someone's chest. But Ares doesn't flinch. You were never meant to become this, he says. Phobos laughs. You made me this. He steps forward barefoot on blackened earth. You whispered in my ear every time you went to battle, told me to grow louder, told me fear made the enemy weaker, told me to never stop. I was wrong, Ares says quietly. That stops Phobos, only for a moment. Then rage. You don't get to regret me, he snaps. You built me, brick by bloody brick, and now you come crawling back like some tired mortal who wants a fresh start. Ares doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't move. He just says, I didn't come to change you. He steps closer. I came to stop you. Phobos snarls. The air around him warps. The sky dims. You feel your own knees buckling, but Ares stands firm. I'll let you grow without a guide, he says. Let you become a god with no heart, no pause, no mercy. That's not strength, that's rot. Phobos screams, the kind of scream that cracks time. But Ares keeps walking forward step by step like someone entering a burning house to pull out the last child left inside. You won't haunt the next war, he says, not this way. The ground quakes, Phobos lunges, and Ares catches him not with fists, with arms. He holds him like a father who forgot how. Phobos writhes, claws, bites, and then stops. You watch the transformation. The nightmare form flickers, fades, and all that remains is a boy, pale, trembling, crying. He crumples in Ares's arms, and Ares holds him like he might disappear. You can't breathe. You're not supposed to witness this. But you do, because even the god of war deserves one final redemption. I was afraid, the boy sobs. I was always afraid.
Ares lowers his head. So was I. And they sit there, the two of them, fear, and the man who made it. Not gods, just a father and a son who finally understood each other too late. Eventually Phobos vanishes, dissolves into smoke, not destroyed, but at rest, for now. Ares turns to you, and for the first time in this entire journey, his eyes are wet. Let's keep going, he says, voice low. And you do, because what else is there after facing your worst creation, except facing what's left of yourself? The path stretches long and flat now, like the world itself is exhaling. You and Ares walk through golden fields under a grey-blue sky. The wind is soft, the ground dry, but kind. Somewhere a flock of birds cuts across the clouds in a V headed somewhere warmer, somewhere less heavy. And for the first time, Ares doesn't lead. He walks beside you. His steps are slower, measured, like he's listening to each one land. Eventually you reach a place so still it feels like time forgot it. A ridge, a hill, nothing remarkable about it, until you see what rests at the top. A helmet. Not the helmet of panic, his helmet. The one he wore in his prime, red-crested, bronze-scarred, etched with so many symbols it might as well be a resume. It sits there in the grass like an old warhorse that finally lay down. He walks to it, kneels, touches it, doesn't pick it up, just runs a finger along its edge, where a crack from a long-forgotten battle splits the metal like a lightning vein.
This was the last thing I made, he says. You raise an eyebrow. You forged it. He nods, with Hephaestus, before we hated each other. He smirks at that, but it fades quickly. You sit beside him. Why here, you ask? He leans back, arms on his knees, because this is where I stopped. You scan the hill. There's no battle marker, no shrine, just wind. What happened? He breathes in nothing. And somehow that's heavier than any war story he could have told. I came up here once, he says. After a war I didn't start, didn't want, didn't even understand. He pauses. I looked down at the battlefield and didn't feel a thing. You're quiet? Because you know that moment when exhaustion and disillusionment finally overwhelm anger. I thought if I took off the helmet, he continues, the rage would go with it. Did it? He smiles. No. But I stopped leading with it. He pulls his gauntlets off slowly, sets them beside the helmet, then unclasps his chestplate. Then the greaves. Piece by piece, the god of war becomes a man in linen. The armor lies in the grass like a snake shedding its old skin. You ask what now. He looks around at the sky, the grass. You. I walk, and then he shrugs. Maybe I help someone build something. The quiet stretches out again, but this time it's not the hush before war, it's peace. You sit in it together for a long while. Then he stands, leaves the helmet behind, and without ceremony walks downhill, arms loose, steps light. You follow, not because he needs you now, but because you want to. Because the war, God has finally put down the thing that made him famous, and he didn't die, he just changed. You walk together into a world that feels freshly made. There are no spears here, no war drums hiding behind the breeze, just hills, wildflowers, a distant goat complaining about something you'll never care to understand. Ori's moves without urgency, without tension. It's strange. You realize something as you watch him walk, hands unarmed, gaze soft. He has finally become quiet. At the base of the hill stands a small shrine, not built by priests, but by villagers. Pebbles stacked, bits of cloth tied to twigs, carvings in stone so crude they could be accidental. And yet it's for him. Ares pauses before it, reads a message etched into wood worn nearly smooth by rain, for the God who let us live. He doesn't touch it, doesn't kneel, just reads. And for the first time in this whole journey, his face is unreadable, not guarded, just at rest. You sit on a rock nearby as he lowers himself to the grass. No armor, no weapons, no burden, only the weight of being no longer needed. He watches the sky. It's strange, he says. What is I thought if I stopped fighting I'd disappear? He closes his eyes. But now I feel more like myself than ever. You lie back beside him. Let the warmth of the earth sink into your bones. A butterfly lands on the top of his foot. He doesn't move, doesn't smirk, just watches it, as if it might teach him something more, and maybe it already has. From the hill a shepherd boy waves. Ares lifts a hand and waves back. No fear, no awe, just one person to another, a quiet respect. You don't speak much as the sun begins to slide behind the hills. The shadows stretch, but nothing feels ominous, because there will be no battle tonight, not from him. Not ever again unless he chooses, and somehow that's more terrifying to Olympus than any rage he ever unleashed. You feel it now. The end, not of him, of his war. And it came not with thunder, but with a soft choice to refuse, to walk away, to let war miss him, and to not miss it back. He turns to you, voice almost a whisper now. Thank you, he says. You want to ask for what? but you already know, for watching, for staying, for seeing him beyond the blood. You close your eyes, and the final image you carry isn't of the god of war on a battlefield. It's of a man under the fading sky, watching the wind move through wheat on a hill where nothing echoes anymore. The sky has gone completely quiet now.
A deep blue blanket, soft at the edges, wrapped gently around the hills and stones and stories you've walked through. You lie there beside him, the grass cool beneath your palms, the earth steady beneath your spine. The stars have begun to bloom one by one. No rush, no urgency. Just like him. You listen to the hush of night birds settling, to the distant clink of a shepherd's bell, to the rhythm of your own breath slowing. Ares doesn't speak again. He doesn't need to. His war is over. And yours, maybe it's softening too. Maybe tonight is the night. You lay down your own armor, not forever, not dramatically, but just for now. Just long enough to rest, long enough to breathe. Because we all carry battles that no one sees, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is not draw the sword. Sometimes we win by walking away. So let your limbs grow heavy now. Let your thoughts loosen their grip.
You've walked with a god tonight, yes, but more than that, you've seen what he became when the noise fell away. Someone tired, someone honest, someone peaceful. And if he can find quiet after everything, then maybe so can you. Sleep well, traveler. The war god watches the stars now. He doesn't guard a battlefield anymore. He guards your rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.